Page 84 in the Siddur. So you can see there, it says, the bottom of the page, the 6 remembrances. In 6 places in the Torah, we are commanded by Hashem to remember. And hence, we make mention of them every single day at the end of the service. That's why it's printed in the Siddur. Moreover, we once talked about this, we won't go into it now, but there are certain places in the Shachris where we are supposed to connect to one of these 6 remembrances. What are they? Let's read them. The first one is, it's from the book of Exodus, so that you remember the day you came out of the land of Egypt, all the days of your life. All right, so we're commanded to remember the Exodus every day. Second commandment from Deuteronomy: beware and guard your soul scrupulously, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen, and lest they be removed from your heart all the days of your life. Make known to your children and to your children's children what you saw on the day when you stood before God your Lord at Horeb, which means Mount Sinai. So what's that remembrance? We have to remember every day what?
The giving of the...
Exactly, the giving of the Torah, precisely. Turn the page, that was number 2. Number 3, this is from Deuteronomy, Parsha Kiseitze. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you came out of Egypt, and we met you on the way and cut down all the weak who straggled behind you when you were weary and exhausted, and he did not fear God. Therefore, when God your Lord will relieve you of all your enemies around you, in the land which God your Lord gives you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. So here too, actually, there's 2 commandments. One is not to forget, and the other...
To forget.
Actually, pardon?
The other is to forget.
To blot out the memory.
The other one is
To blot out the memories.
to erase him, to physically destroy Amalek. It's a commandment to destroy Amalek. There is no such commandment with respect to any other people on earth except Amalek. We can't do this nowadays because...
We don't know who Amalek is.
Yeah, one of the main problems is we don't know who he is. Since the king of Babylon mixed up all of the tribes, since the word Babylon means Babel, confusion, because that's what he did. He deliberately confused people by resettling them in different places so as to keep control over the conquered territories. People no longer having allegiance to their soil. They're foreigners. So plus confusion, weakening of society.
It doesn't specifically say to annihilate Amalek. It just says to blot out the memory.
In other places, it spells it out to annihilate young, old, everything. Even anything that has, even animals, anything that has the name of Amalek has to be
So
destroyed.
it's not politically correct, right, to say that?
Probably not, but
No, I'm just saying that it's not. In today, I'm not quarreling with it. I'm just saying now in today's world, it's not politically correct.
which is
to
maybe
blot
why,
out the children,
maybe
blot
why
out-
one of the reasons we don't know who it is, because it's not going to work right now.
Yeah.
Could you take it to the other extreme that everybody is a Amalek?
No, absolutely not.
No.
That means you kill everyone? No, we don't do that. Okay. That was number what? That was number 4. Number 3. 1, 2, 3. 4 is, remember not to forget how you provoked the Lord your God to wrath in the desert. Anybody? What's that referring to?
Complaining.
How do you say that?
Golden calf.
The golden calf?
No, it's not the golden calf.
They
It's
were
the complaint about the
complaining
meat
about
and
the birds.
in general the series of
Constant
complaints. Lots of complaints, yeah.
Meat, the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Jews like to complain.
They do.
Like the menu.
They're already critiquing the restaurant they were eating at.
Exactly.
The menu, huh?
Number 5, remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam on the way as he came out of Egypt, the story there. She slandered Moishe and she
Moshe and
was
Aaron.
afflicted, yeah. Well, Moishe afflicted with a kind of this tzaras and they had to wait for her and so on. And finally, remember the Shabbos day to sanctify it.
Doesn't it say to remember you were strangers in Egypt? Doesn't use the word Zachor? No?
Remember that you were strangers. Yeah, it
A
says
strange one.
it says you shall be kind to the
But doesn't it?
foreigner.
But it's not one of the remembers.
Yes, not one of the rememberers. a remembrance.
I don't know.
Perhaps because if there's no foreigner, then there's no need to remember. These are universal. That's specific. If there's a foreigner, remember you're also a foreigner, treat him kindly. If there's no foreigner, there's no mitzvah. These are universal. All right, so these are the 6 remembrances. Of course, we're looking at this now because number 3 is Amalek, and this Shabbos is Parsha Zachor. This Shabbos we have a special reading, always the Shabbos before Purim. Why the Shabbos before Purim? Because Haman was a descendant of Amalek, so this is the time chosen to fulfill that commandment and have a public reading and remember what Amalek did to you when you came out of Egypt and he attacked you. All right, so that's the 6 remembrances and now some commentary. Please take one of these pages, friends, and pass them around. The bottom of the right-hand page. The heading says Parsha Zachor. The Parsha to remember, which is the one we're reading this week, and we're going to be reading the commandment that we just quoted from the book of Deuteronomy, from Parshas Kiseitze. Here's the question. B'Mogen Avram. Mogen Avram is a commentary, a classic commentary on the Code of Jewish Law on the Shulchan Aruch. Hiksha, he raises the following question. We need to understand, we need a reason. Lama tiknu likreis Parshas Amalek. Why is it, of all the 6 remembrances, it's only when it comes to remembering Amalek that the sages enacted that we have a special reading. Mashali tiknu b'schiris acherim. But there are 5 others which we're also enjoined to remember, and we don't have a public reading of the section in the Torah when we're told to remember it. We just have to remember it. Why was this singled out? Why was the Parsha of Amalek singled out to have a public reading every year on the Shabbos before Purim? That's his question. Simple question. Yeah, it's a good one. In the brackets, Shar Aschidus, why don't we have a remembrance for the remaining remembrances of the 6 that we are commanded to remember? V'tiritz, and he answers. Here's the Mogen Avram's answer. Quote, that stands for anybody, Mem Tov, Matan Torah. The Matan Torah, now one of the commandments is to remember what? The day you stood at Chorev, and your eyes saw, you yourself, you witnessed the revelation of God at Sinai and passed this on to your children. So just by the way, in parenthesis, just to point out, which I think we have discussed in the past, it's a very important element of the rationale, if you like, of our faith. How do we know the Torah is true? So the simple answer is because the revelation of God was witnessed by millions and passed down in an uninterrupted chain to this very day. It's impossible for an individual to come up with a scenario that millions of people saw this and then tell it to the next to the next generation, because immediately the second generation gets the document that we saw this. You can't manufacture millions saw this, and therefore no other faiths begin that way. They'll begin with God spoke to me. That's it. Whether it was Muhammad or you know who, or you know who, or you don't know who. So they claim that, well, you don't want to know who. They claim that God revealed themselves to them, and they're very charismatic, and they convince a small group, convinces a larger group, and then usually by force and politically, mostly by force, or bribery in some way, coercion in some way. They convince a group, and then it becomes a world religion, but it all rests on one person's veracity. And Judaism doesn't. It begins with the testimony of millions, as recorded in the book, and passed down uninterruptedly. So the second generation gets from their parents, we were there, here. And like anything, as we pointed out in the past, all of history, we believe in history because people witnessed it. And that's the historical record. But nobody witnessed an event so many at one time like this. It's like the one event that has the most and most diverse group of people that witnessed it, that rebelled often against the law, etc. But nobody could say it didn't happen. The record itself, the Torah tells us that this was a tough group. This was not a group that you could just convince of anything you wanted. And so they argued all the time. As we pointed out, Jews argued and criticized. One thing they couldn't say was there was no revelation. So, anyway, that's one of the things we have to remember. That was just in parenthesis. Now, back to the question. So, answers the Magen Avraham. So, when it comes to Matan Torah, at the top of the next page, Shlonda, we do have a public remembrance. So, what's that? When do we have a public? Shavuos, Chag Atzeres. There's no need to establish a special reading. We have a Yom Tov of Shavuos, so that takes care of that. All right? What about Shabbos? Likewise, V'u'adin Shabbos. There's no need to have a once a year, whatever, reading about, to remember, to observe Shabbos, when we in fact have Shabbos every week. Now what about the other ones, in brackets? So V'shar HaSchidus, the other ones, the sages, didn't want to make a public reading. Why? Yesh ben genusan shal Yisrael, because they're uncomplimentary. They're describing something we did wrong. Just remember, what are they? You help me. So there's the other ones. Slander. We don't want to make a public reading that Miriam slandered. We want to remember that, but not give it undue attention. And what else?
Jews provoked the wrath.
We provoked God's wrath. It's also uncomplimentary.
Spies.
That was it. So with that we covered them all. Did we miss something? Open up the siddur. So Torah. Oh yeah. Give me the Torah. We have Shavuos. We have Shabbos. We have Shabbos. Purim. We have to have that because there's no. We need to have the reading for Amalek. So what's left? The other three were Miriam. And what? No, the negative ones. The 6. We're missing something here.
The first one, remember the day you came out of Egypt.
So if Pesach we have Shabbos. We have Parsha Zachor for Purim. So 3 more. 3 more.
Chorev is okay, that's it.
Chorev. No, we said that. That's Shavuos already. I'm sorry. Give me the 3, the negative.
Don't forget
Provoke. Miriam.
Shabbos is the last one.
No, that's 5. We're missing one.
Remember the day.
No. I want you to give me the 3 that we do not have enacted for. The negative ones.
Okay. So it says beware.
Provoke the God.
Well, the only one that has here is provoke the Lord. Remember the Miriam, what did Miriam did? Amalek, it says, on Shabbos. And the second one, be aware, guard your soul scrupulously, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen.
That's sure. No, give me this.
Okay.
We're missing something.
I'm not making this up.
You want to give me 5? Give me 6.
It's a pity that Miriam did so many good things, and we have to bring this up.
Right.
She was such a good person.
Right. So that's why the point is. What we have to remember is. We have to remember.
I'm a racist.
Good point, and that's why the point is we want to remember Lashon Hara, the terrible sin of Lashon Hara. By reading about Miriam, it's not fair. She was really. It's one of the.
Sure.
If we don't want to make a public reading about Miriam's story, right? That's one of the maybe another reason. So the other negative things are. So the Exodus we have Pesach, Chorev we have Shavuos, Amalek. Now therefore we need to have Parsha Zachor, and then you angered God. That's negative. Miriam. So there's 2 negative, and Shabbos we have Shabbos. So 4 we have 3. So we have 3 Yom Tovim.
Shabbos.
We have Shabbos, Shavuos.
Parsha Zachor.
No, Zachor. Yeah, well,
Purim.
Shabbos. Oh, Pesach. We have Pesach, Shabbos, and Shavuos. That's the 3 Yom Tovim. Pesach, Shabbos, and Shavuos. Then we have the 2. That is 3. The 2 negative we don't want to do is 5. And we're left by default with Parsha Zachor that we have to have a reading for. That's his answer. Now, the problem with the answer.
Still not nice with Miriam. They could have picked somebody else.
We have to understand his answer. You should be asking the question. No. Why did we say we don't have to have a reading for Pesach, for example? The reading to remember the Exodus, because we have
remember that every day.
We have pace.
because we have Pesach, we have a Yom Tov. We're looking for a public demonstration.
But you also, with the Jews complaining, you read that in the Torah about them constantly complaining.
Yeah, but it's not a special reading. It's read in the narrative. It's not a specially singled out public reading. Looking for a special event. But I want you to ask a question on the Magen Avraham answer. He's saying we don't need for Pesach. We don't need to remember the Exodus. We got Pesach. We don't need Shabbos because we have Shabbos. No, and Amalek we have what?
Purim.
We have Purim. We got Purim too. Purim reminds us of what Amalek did. That's the whole story. So why do we have to have a special reading? That's the Rebbe's question. But his question needs, we need to understand his question. In other words, the Rebbe kind of respectfully says we've got to look for another answer. When it comes to remembering Amalek, we do have a special, unique public expression, and that is Purim. That is wiping out and remembering and erasing Amalek. That's in fact the reason that we
Make the noise.
make the noise when Haman's name is mentioned. In fulfillment of this, remember what Amalek did and blot out his name. It should be enough. The Haman hoy mizera Amalek. Haman was from the seed of Amalek, and Mavur become Mekoimes, as explicitly stated in many places. So our question is, then why do we have to have a special reading when we have Purim? Now he strengthens the question by Va'ayin Megillah. Look at Tractate Megillah, where the Gemara discusses there's two opinions, whether Parsha Zachor should be before Purim or after Purim. The ruling is, as we all know, we read it before Purim. What's the reason? Listen to the Gemara's words. Tiktum asiya l'schira. You should first have the mention and then the doing, not the doing and then the remembering. Because so the Gemara is clearly saying that Purim is the actual fulfillment of it. So if Purim is fulfilling of it, you don't have to have a special mentioning when we actually have the day when we wipe out, remember, and stamp our feet and so on, wipe out Amalek's name.
Isn't there an inherent contradiction in saying, remember what Amalek did to you and then blot out his memory? How
Yeah.
do you do both?
If you're remembering, yeah. So the simple answer is, as long as there's a presence of Amalek, remember. Once he's blotted out, the mitzvah is done. Once there's no trace of Amalek. Now, since we haven't destroyed him yet, we need still to remember. But we're going to go into a deeper level and answer your question a little bit deeper as well. So anyway, our question now is, Hari Lehedu, we see explicitly, Shepurim have ahasiya, Teschiris Amalek. The Gemara considers Purim fulfilling the mitzvah of remembering Amalek. And therefore the mention of it should be before, not after you've done the mitzvah. It should be an introduction. Let's remember, our Purim, let's do it. So if you have Purim, you don't have to have, you've got it all in one. Just like you have Shabbos, remember Shabbos. You're not just remembering Shabbos on Shabbos, you're observing Shabbos. On Pesach, you're not just remembering the Exodus, you're reenacting it. So you've got it all in one package. The same thing is here. No different. So we're left with our question, and that is, why do we have to have a special reading on the Shabbos before, which is this Shabbos, when surely we fulfill remembering and actually, in some level, fulfilling the mitzvah on Purim itself? Now, the question becomes stronger, and again, introducing some of the points raised by the doctor. But and further, we need to understand it, this whole mitzvah. The mitzvah schiris Amalek bepashtus, as just mentioned moments ago. Why are we remembering? We're remembering so that you pick up your sword and wherever you see Amalek, you wipe him out. Bepashtus, its simple meaning is bishvil mechias Amalek. It's all in order to erase Amalek. Or Harambam, like Maimonides writes, B'Sefer HaMitzvahs, in his work called the Book of Mitzvahs, quote, Shetzivonu, God commanded us, Liskir, to remember Masha Asalon Amalek, which Amalek did for us. What's the point of the remembering? Kedei, in order L'Oir HaNefashis, to arouse us, Li'Lochem Boy, to wage war with him. The remembering is only a means in order to remember. And remember what? And wipe him out. Eradicate. Ayin Shom, see there further detail. So what's our question we're now driving at? Since nowadays, we cannot fulfill the mitzvah literally of wiping out Amalek, as mentioned earlier, because we don't even know who it is. and in brackets for another consideration. The mitzvah mechias Amalek, the mitzvah to wipe out Amalek, Eina Ela only applies, like many other commandments, Kishi Yisrael Shruyin Alad Mosem. We need all Jews living in Israel. There are many laws that only can be fulfilled when all, or at least the majority, live in Israel. That's not the case, so we cannot do this mitzvah. And furthermore, even if we were all living in Israel, we still don't know who he is. Harekve Olav Sancherev, the king of Babylon, arose, and he mixed up the whole world, and therefore the Egyptians are the Egyptians, and no one is living. People living today in their land, no one's living in their ancestral land. It's all mixed up. They're not descendants of the ancient Egyptians at all, Palestinians or anybody else. So, therefore, we don't know who Amalek is. So, what's the question? Im Kain. This is all leading to the question. Maybe you're going to ask it. If we just finished saying that remembering is in order to do what? To wipe out. Since we can't wipe out, what's the point of remembering? What's this big mitzvah?
Once they hanged Haman, didn't they fulfill destroy Amalek?
Yeah, they fulfilled it in him, but
He wasn't
the only descendant.
It was the king.
The mitzvah is not fulfilled until every last descendant is eradicated. Im kain kosher b'yoyses. So the question is a strong question that Rebbe asks. Why is it so important to remember? Okay, we shouldn't dismiss it. We have to remember. One day, maybe, we'll be able to do it. But why is it that important? At Shetiknu Kriya, they established a reading v'Shabbos and a special Shabbos miuchedes al kach. A special Shabbos to remember what Amalek did when it's remember in order to, and you can't do the in order to. So what's the point of the whole mitzvah? So therefore we're compelled to say as follows. But just, friends, let's first repeat we have two questions. Question one,
Why do we need a special?
why do we need a Parsha when we have Purim? Question two,
Why do you need to remember?
what's the point of remembering, since anyway it's moot, it's impotent. We can't follow up on it since we cannot identify Amalek.
Well, we can, yeah.
One question. When were all the Jews in Israel where that potentially could have been fulfilled?
Up until the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash.
Right.
It's a long time, for those hundreds of
At that
years.
point,
After that, they couldn't do it
it's been
anymore.
moved.
Yeah, it's for a long time it's been moved, like thousands of years. Makes the question stronger. As we're remembering something we haven't done and can't do for thousands of years. What's the point? So we have to say, therefore, there's more to this than meets the eye. Let's see. So therefore, all of this points us to say, true, in other words, there's two dimensions to this mitzvah. There's one dimension, remember, in order to. That's one dimension. We can't do the in order to. But there's something inherently critical about remembering Amalek. It has an independent value, just the remembering alone, which is a spiritual thing, which is really internal. It's internal. Which does apply to everyone, in all places and all times. So what we're saying is it's a spiritual, personal, a remembering thing. It's not about anybody out there. It's about me. There's something about remembering Amalek that is so important that it applies in all times and all places, and that important that the sages enacted a special reading, notwithstanding the Yom Tov of Purim. We need to have a public reading of the Torah. Why? Now he's going to explain.
How many people did he really kill?
Not many. Well, Amalek itself then? Well, I don't know. It's hard to know. Arguably, Hitler, the Germans were descendants of Amalek. There is a Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz means German. Does trace back to Amalek. So again, people are mixed up. Logically, we would think that this kind of absolute intolerable hatred of the Jew, that's Amalek. This clinical, just Jew destruction. So he killed a lot of Jews. If we take the Holocaust into account.
Yeah.
So now we can explain all of the above. What are we going to explain now? What is this mitzvah to remember? In light of the explanation of the Alter Rebbe, top of the next column, page Reish Tes, the last column on the page, left, extreme left, top. We find in the language of our sages, we find the following expression. Whenever our sages talk about the mitzvah to remember, to obliterate, they use the expression Zadai Shel Amalek, the seed of Amalek. It's an unusual expression. The descendants. There's many ways to say this. Just Amalek is enough. Obviously, we meet Amalek, and as he continues down the line, why do our sages constantly refer to the seed? Answer: because our sages are hinting and telling us that he planted something in us. It's seeded in us. Amalek is not just the enemy out there, but the enemy within. Shpirish Hazriya Shaloi, his planting, his seeding. Shezora b'Yisrael liyos lahem b'chinazu. He penetrated, infiltrated the Jewish psyche, and he implanted something of himself within each and every one of us. And what is that? Let's see. V'zehu, and this we're going to, that's the meaning of Zachor, remember, asher asa lecha Amalek. The verse reads, what Amalek did to you. Not what he did. Of course he did it to us. To say to you, of course it's to us. Read the story, he attacked us. Why does the Torah have to say, remember what he did to you? When that's the whole point? Because the to you comes to hint that it's something in you. The kol echad ve'echad me Yisrael, each and every Jew b'chol hadoros, in all generations. And what is it? So now we're going to explain that the evil of Amalek is the most insidious. It's the most insidious and difficult evil, and in fact, it's the root of all evil. Worse than Pharaoh, worse than the Greeks and the Babylonians and every other enemy we faced. Why? Here we come to the point. As the Alter Rebbe explains there, in Yonah, the meaning, the content, the property, shall klipat Amalek, of the evil of Amalek. The word klipa means, it's a Kabbalistic term, it means shell or cover. All evil is described as something which covers or conceals the divine. Who is Amalek? Let's look at the very beginning of the story. To Moishe, Amalek Yoda, because he knew. What's unique about him is he knew V'ro as kol hanisim, and he saw the miracles Shenasa Yisrael that were done to the Jewish people. When did he attack the Jews? When they were coming out of Egypt, riding high after the 10 plagues, the crossing of the Red Sea, on the way to receive the Torah. The whole world was like awestruck at these miracles, at the display of the divine. They're all afraid to touch us. And Amalek, despite seeing all of this, he attacks. Our sages describe it like this. It's a famous parable of a hot tub that nobody would go into because it was too hot. So one fellow goes in, gets burned, but once he's done that, we can go into. So he knew he was going to get burnt and did get burnt, but what he did succeed was, they're not untouchable. He cooled the ardor. In fact, korcha, right? Korcha, that's the word the Torah uses. Remember what Amalek did, asher korcha baderech, which he met you along the way. Now the word korcha is also an unusual word. He met you, he attacked you, which is he met you. So the word korcha also comes from the word kar, which means cold. Makar is the frigidaire in modern Hebrew. He made you cold, he made the world cold. But more than that, he makes us cold. Let's see further how insidious Amalek is. What is he? He knows. Amalek doesn't say it's not true. I know it's true, and the Torah is true, but not interested. Cold. That's the most difficult evil. If someone opposes Yiddishkeit because he has a question, it's a problem. Okay, we can discuss and debate. I'm hurt by it. Okay, we're going to heal you. If there's a reason, we can deal with the reason, and we can draw that person near. But when the person opposing says, hey, it's all true, I know. Just flat obstinate. I'm not doing this, even though I agree and admit that it's all true. That's pure ego at its core obstinate level. That's the most difficult battle. In simple language, Amalek represents the core essence of the ego that says, that's it. Put me first. Yiddishkeit, when I'm interested, yes. When I'm not, no. Give me a rationale. It's not true, it's not beautiful, it's beautiful, it's true. I'm not interested. Because I want to do what I want to do. that irrational, which admits the truth and still opposes, that is the great battle, which is really the ultimate battle. We all have to struggle, each one on their level, forever until Mashiach comes. Continuing. Like a Parai, not like Parai. What did Parai say? Lo yadaitis Hashem. What are you talking about, Moses? I don't know the God you're talking about. I don't know what you're saying. So his opposition is out of ignorance. So we'll teach him. And in the end he learns, okay, there's a God. In the end, in fact, he was humbled. We don't hear of the Egyptians again. Learned their lesson, and that's it. Footnote in history. But Amalek persists. The Amalek within persists because it's not a rational or even an emotional resistance. It's just the core, stubborn ego. She'ein zeh, look in the words of here, ela chutzpah, it's an audacity, beli tam v'das, without rationale. So the Rebbe concludes, quoting from the Alter Rebbe here, the founder of Chabad, the author of the Tanya, Kach yesh klipa zu b'nefesh. And this is a struggle, a battle that we all have within ourselves. The Gam also kasher levo v'yovin, his heart understands, b'avodas Hashem, that the serving God, he understands it's the right thing. Shekach yoselo, it's good for him. Yeah, he even knows it's good for him. It's the right thing. And yet, lo yidai, what happens? Not only she'enoi machriach es liboy, he doesn't summon the discipline to compel himself, the koifoi or la toisoi, to compel himself and to veer himself, the Yavas Hashem, to serve God because he knows this is what's right and true. Ela oises ahipach, he finds himself doing the opposite, legamri, completely neged adas, against his own logic. In other words, it's this pure ego, the pure stubborn ego, that I want to do what I want to do. Yes, it's all true, but now I want to do what I want to do. So this is a battle that is internal. That's what the Torah is saying we have to remember forever. The external battle Mashiach will take care of, and that's not a problem. The external battle will be realized when we defeat the internal battle. And interestingly enough, in Chassidus, we find that the Rebbes, the Rabbi of Chabad, have a tremendous, spoke often and passionately in many Maimorim about this battle with Amalek. Because this is the only battle at the end of the day. At the end of the day, the only battle is with the core, stubborn, irrational ego. The intellect, the emotion, that can be won over, that eventually, you can break through that. But this one is the toughest. And the only way to break through that is with complete selflessness. And moreover, well, we're going to see the answer now in a second. Go on. You have a question?
Is this the heart ruling the mind, so to speak? Like, from the Tanya perspective, that's what we were learning, I think, even yesterday.
Is this well, there we are learning about...
The heart which controls the ego, and it's about yourself, and the rational thought...
yeah, in a way that's connected. Yeah, but sometimes Amalek is that insidious that even when we entertain the rational thought, still won't do it. Still won't resist the sin, or still won't do the mitzvah. It's just this obstinance that is completely super rational. And if we're honest, we find it. It's just I'm not in the mood right now. Maybe not in the mood. You know it's right. You're supposed to. You know the reward, punishment. He knows everything. The answer is no. That's the big battle. And it's very relative, each one on their level. We all struggle with this, each one on our own level in service of Hashem. So having said that this is the ultimate battle and it's a spiritual one, now we're answered that Purim is not enough. We have to have a special Torah read. Why? So what's the... Yes?
I'm not sure if did you answer that question about the seed? Like, how did Amalek plant it? Is that the idea that he planted a seed?
Yeah, but God allowed him to, because that's our battle. God allowed him clearly to plant that seed in us. He encountered you at your highest moment of inspiration, and he injected you with this obstinance that we're going to be struggling with forever. We have to remember Amalek. You know where he comes from? It comes from Esav. It's a relative. It's not like it's part of. It's somewhere in our animal soul's gene.
A cousin.
It's a cousin.
It's a recessive gene or something.
It's
a recessive gene.
It's a recessive gene that what?
It's implanted in us.
That won't go away so quickly. So what's the solution? Va'etza yi'utza, so the answer, the solution, the vatal klipazo, to battle this insidious, obstinate resistance. We have to have a special Torah reading. Al yidei kriyas parshas Amalek b'Torah. We have to invoke the Torah, a Torah reading, not just a holiday, but a Torah reading. And the holiday is a rabbinic holiday, which is great and wonderful. But we need like a stronger medicine here. We need a public Torah reading. The Godel koiche shel Torah. Great is the power of the Torah. The Iraisa v'kutshabricha kol echad. For Torah and Hashem are all one. We need to have a public reading and take out the second Torah and read from it. And that's going to give us, plug into that. With this, you'll be able to, such a strong message, that we need a special Torah reading and drawing on Torah's inspiration, will we be able to combat Amalek. Levatel klippas Amalek, to be able to nullify his klippa. V'chein kosov, v'chein, final words. V'kach kosov, and so writes the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, quote, Sheyidei, final words of the teaching here, Ayidei kriya, through the reading, Shekoira parshas mechias Amalek b'Torah, by making a public reading of the obligation to wipe out Amalek, by reading it in the Torah. This is what gives us this added strength, this unique strength. There's a klippas Amalek. So we don't need any other 6 remembrances. The other 5, we don't have this public reading. Shabbos is enough, but Amalek, that's such a deep battle that the Yom Tov itself, the celebration, is insufficient. We need before that a public reading to empower us. And a final word, yes?
I'm nodding.
Yeah, and a final word, another thing which is brought down in Chassidus is like this, that when they first battled Amalek, the Torah says, Moishe Rabbeinu said to Yeshua, when they battled Amalek, Bechar lono anoshim, choose for us people. Who's the us? So Rashi explains, these are the words, Anshe Moishe. Those are loyal to Moishe. Loyal to Moishe, they're the ones to be able to battle Amalek. So the message there is also that in order to battle Amalek, you've got to be connected to the tzaddik, to the Moses of the generation, because this is such a deep battle, you're not going to be able to do it on your own. He needs to help facilitate, to bring out the depths in me, to be able to fight this Amalek wherever he is present. And the battle goes on, fighting the ego. Till Mashiach comes, then God says at the end, when you have done your thing, I will wipe out. In the end, God says, I'll wipe out Amalek. Does it mean the wholesale slaughter? I doubt it. God will find his way of eradicating that evil literally out there in the world, that the anti-Semitism that's irrational. It's an irrational anti-Semitism. But the irrational anti-Semitism, God himself in the end will obliterate. But we got to do our work by obliterating that irrational resistance that we have subtly within our heart. We could be, in other words, the point here is a person could be observant and from everything is a fine Jew. But all of a sudden, there's the Amalek. Where he resists. Not me, not now, leave me alone. That's Amalek. That we have to battle. We need a Torah reading. What?
Kaltkite.
Yeah, cold. We're just cold in a different.
When it says to blot out the memory of Amalek, it is referring to the Amalek within us, or is referring to evil that's trying to kill us from outside?
So that's what we're saying. There's 2 parts to it. The remember is within. The obliterate is the without. The physical one.
Is not our mind.
Huh?
Yetzirah is not our mind.
Yes, yeah. So the Yetzer Hara has many levels. The core essence is Amalek. The deepest, hardest core of the Yetzer Hara, that's Amalek. There are 7 nations. There are 7 nations that the Jews had to battle, not obliterate, mind you. They're given a choice: leave or not. Now, those 7 nations refer to the 7 evil emotions that are part of the Yetzer Hara. They can be turned around. If they accepted the covenant, they can remain. But the core Amalek, the core of the Yetzer Hara, is no negotiation. That's got to be obliterated. The core of the ego has to be wiped out.
So another analogy
crushed.
is if you give a child liver and the child says, I don't want to eat liver, I don't like it. Well, how do you know you don't like it? You didn't try it. So that's the person hating the Jew. Why do you hate the Jew? I don't know, I just hate him.
Yeah, it's a kind of irrational. Yeah. It's a
So,
childish.
it's a
So in the case of the liver, that's innocent. No one gets hurt.
Right.
But when it gets, it can be. Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't like that
it
analogy. I was
stems
a
all the
difficult
way
leader.